The hypocrisy is real. The hypocrisy is real. And just imagine my surprise when I saw that the hypocrisy was coming from a woke welfare collector at the worldwide leader in woke, ESPN. Let me ask you something. How can a network that calls themselves the worldwide leader in sports, how can that same network be so painfully bad, incompetent when it comes to covering sports? How can that network provide its dwindling audience the absolute worst coverage of every league? Friday night, I am watching Mavs Nuggets on ESPN. I'm already out of patience because the game didn't tip off till after 9 o'clock, which meant I had to stay up past midnight to watch the Mavs pull off an impressive win on the road against Denver. The game itself was phenomenal. The product on the court was great. Problem was, the game was broadcast on ESPN, which offers the worst coverage imaginable of the NBA. Doris Burke was calling the game, so it was automatically insufferable. At one point, Doris Burke said, "Did you guys know Nikola Jokic has underrated hands? His hands are the most underrated aspect of his game." Excuse me? Come again? How can a dude that has won 4 consecutive MVP awards, how can he have anything about his game that is underrated? Well, KC, Jokic only won 3 MVPs. Joel Embiid won the award in 2023. No, and this is no disrespect to Joel Embiid, but he was handed that award in 2023 because the media expressed their fake outrage over a white dude dominating the NBA. The halftime show on ESPN Friday night, it was equally atrocious. At this point, ESPN should just air 20 minutes of commercials during halftime because their NBA panel is completely useless. I was actually surprised that Mina Kimes was not included on that panel Friday night. Well, KC, Mina Kimes is an NFL analyst. She doesn't analyze the NBA. Well, she doesn't analyze the NFL either. Since ESPN is handing out fake job titles, they might as well make Mina Kimes a pretend NBA analyst too. Because I promise you, she could not have been worse than what I saw Friday night. 24 hours earlier, Elle Duncan, she made her contribution to the worst sports coverage on television. I guess the heiress of Dunkin' Donuts chooses to identify as a comedian in her spare time. On the Thursday edition of Lack of Sports Center, Elle Duncan treated viewers to her stand-up comedy routine. But the comedy wasn't the only thing that was egregious about this segment. You could literally see the hypocrisy on the smug face of Elle Duncan as she criticized and made fun of Daniel Jones' farewell speech to the New York Giants. If you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Link to the second channel in the description below. Later today on the second channel, going to be talking about the new pretend basketball league Unrivaled and how the league is already starting with huge embarrassing failure. And speaking of huge embarrassing failure, if you have someone you want to nominate for the Hef Awards next month, shoot me an email, btlkc84@gmail.com. The other day, former Giants quarterback Daniel Jones gave his farewell speech to the organization and to the city of New York. Danny J has experienced a brutal career so far in the NFL. I mean, when you're benched by the dude that Joe Pesci played in Goodfellas, your NFL career is essentially over. I hope Daniel Jones gets a second chance. I hope he can resurrect his career somewhere else like Sam Darnold did this season in Minnesota. But if I'm being honest, it ain't looking good for Danny J. You were so bad. You were released by a team that doesn't have a quarterback on the roster. Elle Duncan, she decided to make fun of an emotional Daniel Jones as he said goodbye to New York. Now, the joking around is not the problem here. Although, if you're going to make fun of someone, it's really important to make it funny. Unfortunately for Elle Duncan, she's about as funny as Saturday Night Live. The joking about Daniel Jones, though, that is not the problem. It is the hypocrisy of Elle Duncan that people are pointing out. We'll get to the hypocrisy here in just a second, but watch it for yourself.
Giants quarterback Daniel Jones just did something so inexplicable that we made an exception. After being benched this week, Jones took to the podium to say goodbye to the franchise and fans, but with like 7 games left in the season.
All right, I wrote something down just to make sure I say it the right way.
I'm sorry, you have to write this down? Didn't you go to Duke? You guys think he had this saved in his notes since like 2020? In all seriousness, DJ, I could have saved you like 90 seconds. A rewrite. Sorry you paid me $108 million for one playoff win, and I look forward to reviving my career as Brock Purdy's backup. The end.
This is so funny. I haven't laughed this hard since Cam Harris was embarrassed in the election. Let me go ahead and rewrite the script for you, Elle Duncan. I'm sorry that ESPN is paying me millions to be the worst host in the history of SportsCenter. I'm sorry that ESPN has given me every chance to become a star, and I am still not recognized at family reunions. The other day, my husband came home and asked me who I was. Look, I have no problem with Elle Duncan attempting to make fun of Daniel Jones. What I have a problem with is the hypocrisy. All summer, Elle Duncan was one of the feminists at ESPN who blindly defended the dump divers in the WNBA. She called out anyone who had the audacity to claim that WNBA players were jealous of Caitlin Clark. According to Elle Duncan, WNBA players, they should be exempt from criticism because they belong to a marginalized group. They shouldn't be made fun of because their life is already difficult trying to survive on their minimum wage salaries. But making fun of Daniel Jones, that's okay. You see, Daniel Jones is the white man. Daniel Jones made millions of dollars. It's okay to make fun of him. But making fun of layups that don't hit the bottom of the net and airball dunks, that is no bueno. It's not just the pretend basketball players in the WNBA who are exempt from criticism. According to Elle Duncan, you are not allowed to criticize Lamar Jackson either. Why? Well, I think it's rather obvious. Earlier this week, Elle Duncan, she claimed that Lamar Jackson should not be blamed for the Ravens' loss to the Steelers last week because his white kicker Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals. Elle Duncan, she's got no problem criticizing Justin Tucker, Baker Mayfield, Aaron Rodgers. Hell, a couple of years ago, she commented on Aaron Rodgers' physical appearance, claiming that Jalen Hurts was more physically attractive than Aaron Rodgers. First of all, who fucking cares? Second of all, if I commented on the physical appearance of players in the WNBA, Elle Duncan would call that misogyny. She would call it racism. This right here is one of the main problems with ESPN's coverage of sports. I try to be fair to everyone. Obviously, I criticize deacons at Woke United Methodist more than I criticize just about anyone else, especially normal people. But normal people don't give me the ammunition to criticize them. Even with that being the case, though, I have criticized conservative media in the past. I've criticized Fox News. There's been times I have been critical of Outkick. I criticized Clay Travis when he made a complete ass of himself at his son's Little League baseball game. He was arguing with the umpire. He ended up getting thrown out of the game from the stands. It was bullshit. I mean, there's no reason for a grown man to be that upset over a meaningless game in Little League baseball. But see, that was a moment. It was a lapse in judgment, a mistake. It was out of character. It was a bad moment for Clay Travis, but that's all it was. A moment. With Elle Duncan and ESPN, This is a pattern, and the pattern continued on Friday morning on Woke Take. Leave it to Elle Duncan to find a way to take this situation that she started and make herself the ultimate victim. Watch for yourself.
I cannot look at my mentions right now. They are big mad at me, calling me all kinds of names, calling me out my name, calling me things you would never say, Pastor Ryan Clark, on a Sunday. Here's the deal. You can be mad at me if you want. I thought it was a little bit silly that he was doing a farewell speech with 7 games left in the season. I also thought it was silly that he needed to write down some boilerplate stuff like thank you to the fans. But you want to call me disrespectful to Daniel Jones? Am I more disrespectful than the Giants making him a scout team safety? Am I more disrespectful than all of those same fans that are in my mentions right now who booed him mercilessly for the last 6 seasons?
What an elitist. What a victim. You know why it took me 3 days to get to this story? Because that's how unimportant Elle Duncan is. And once again, she completely misses the point. The disrespect, not the problem. Me personally, I didn't think Elle Duncan was being disrespectful towards Daniel Jones. I thought she was disrespectful to comedy, but I didn't think she was disrespecting Daniel Jones. It's not the disrespect. It's the hypocrisy. Now, guess who came to the defense of Elle Duncan Friday morning on First Take? Just take a wild guess. Well, Casey, was it Molly Karam? Thankfully, no, it was not. But I could see how you would come to that conclusion. With Elle Duncan being an avowed feminist, I could understand why you would think that Elle Duncan would have another female come to her rescue. But it wasn't Molly Q who came to her defense. It was Stevie A. Wait a minute. Wouldn't that be toxic masculinity? Why is Elle Duncan allowing a toxically masculine man to defend her? Why is she pretending to be the damsel in distress? I don't know about you guys, but that doesn't sound very feminist to me. I thought feminists were all about girl power. I don't need no man, I have a hand. During his defense of Elle Duncan, Stephen A. Smith, he did what he does best. Let's just say Stevie stretched the truth. I'm sure the New York Giants would call it a lie. Stevie claimed that the Giants reached out to ESPN over Elle Duncan making fun of Daniel Jones. The New York Giants said, that's bullshit. Now, I'll let you decide who you believe here, but me personally, I believe the Giants. Why in the hell would they reach out to ESPN over a quarterback that they just released? Why in the hell would they reach out to ESPN over a segment featuring Elle Duncan? No one knows who she is. Elle Duncan has less influence than cackling Cam Harris. There are people at CNN with more mainstream recognition than Elle Duncan, and CNN doesn't have a single star at the network. This is what ESPN calls sports coverage. Is it any wonder why ESPN is having to constantly hire outside talent, outside stars, to provide adequate coverage of sports? Give me your thoughts on this. Elle Duncan hypocritically makes fun of Daniel Jones while forbidding people to make fun of the WNBA or Lamar Jackson. Once she is called out on her hypocrisy, Elle Duncan tries to be the ultimate victim in the situation that she started. Does anyone even watch ESPN anymore? Does ESPN still have influence? Or is ESPN like the rest of the mainstream media and rapidly losing their influence? You tell me. Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys on the second channel later this afternoon.